We've all been witnessing a recent shift, whether you are a part of high-level business conversations or just somebody who keeps up with the news or is on social media. People are feeling fearful, they're feeling uncertain, maybe a little bit insecure, especially as it comes to countries and markets and societies that we typically laud as super secure and super stable, feeling a little bit more uncertain. And so I thought that now, as we enter into 2026, would be the perfect time for us to talk about global expansion and what it means to truly build a global business that is resilient, one that isn't dependent or overly concentrated on any single country or marketplace. This conversation will have a little bit of what if and speculation, thinking about what would happen if the US empire was to fall, just as previous empires like the Roman Empire and others have fallen in the past. But instead of coming in from a disaster-oriented lens, I want to come in more optimistically to give you a little bit more optionality to ensure that no matter what is to happen next, your business can thrive and succeed. So that even if the US continues to be the dominating economy for many years to come, you have that freedom and you just have a little bit more diversity in your business leadership. And if something were to change and fail, you feel prepared going forward. Recent events aside, the most sophisticated and advanced brands have always been doing this. Try to think of and name one household name brand that does not have a presence anywhere outside of the United States. It would be hard to recall because once a business starts to reach a certain size, the next step is always to expand into other markets. So I want you, whether you are running a mid to large size brand and you are naturally taking that next step, or whether you're a small business owner that just wants to set yourself up to dream big, to vision large, and to be strategic for what your next decades might look like instead of just your next week, to be able to operate like these global leaders. When I look at my channel analytics, I know that most of my viewers are in the United States. And so if you happen to fall into this bucket, you're probably thinking about Canada and Europe as first steps to where you could expand to. And I actually think that that's very wise because there's a little bit less friction in entering those markets as an American business leader. There are more similarities in culture, in language, and that means that you're going to understand your potential consumers just that little bit better. However, that being said, similar does not mean identical. I am Canadian and I grew up and spent my early 20s there. However, I lived in the US for the last several years, and even in these two countries that are two peas in a pod, very, very similar in many ways, there are still cultural differences. And I've spent a lot of time in Europe as well and have many friends who are from there or have lived many years of their lives there. And I think that there's actually even more differences over in Europe than within North America. This is all to say that all of the advice that I'm going to give when you think about entering other countries and regions and markets that feel very different from the US, so thinking India, Dubai, China, Japan, Singapore, Australia, other places that just are quite different. All of the same things apply, and you should still be going into any new market, honestly, even if it's like from state to state, or it's just West Coast versus East Coast, or now you're trying to enter the Midwest or the South or the Northeast, or anything that is not your original hometown or the home base of your business, it's always wise to go in with a strategy to hire consultants who are familiar with that region and to not underestimate the slight differences that may change how your consumer reacts. Currently, there are two high growth markets that are really catching my eye that I think every single business, especially businesses with premium offerings, should be looking at in 2026 and paying attention to. The first is the Middle East. There is such high wealth concentration there, and for any businesses that have a hospitality arm or are interested in partnering with or being in conversation with hospitality and luxury experiences, these areas do this so well. And as an honorable mention and kind of an attachment to the Middle East and the conversation around luxury experiences and hospitality, I would actually attach Africa to this. That's the continent that I was born on, and I have a special place in my heart for it. I have seen a lot more wealth within and coming out of these nations, and a lot more interest from people who are like me, who are from the continent but maybe living outside of it, and who have built a lot of success for themselves outside of this continent, desiring to invest back into Africa. So my belief is both the Middle East and Africa are somewhere that you absolutely should be looking at, researching, and interested in to see if there might be really great consumers, collaborators, partners, clients, employees, any ways in which your business can grow a connection to this other global market. The second high growth market that I'm really paying attention to is Asia Pacific. These countries, these nations have such an aesthetic sophistication and so much fluency in luxury languages. I'm thinking about places like Japan, South Korea, Singapore. China famously has always been a huge luxury market. I think for many brands, it is the biggest outside or on par with the United States market in who is driving their luxury purchases. And I believe that that's only going to grow, especially with everything that's just going on with the US economy. I can see more and more brands leaning into Asia Pacific and really fostering that clientele and customer base. Perhaps this is a little bit of bias just because of what I'm seeing in my communities, but it seems like everyone is just always in Japan right now, and then when they're headed over there, they're visiting neighboring and nearby countries like Thailand or Vietnam, etc., etc. Hong Kong is a big one as well. And with this uptick in tourism and just attention on Asia, there's going to be more demand for both luxury experiences and for products. So I think that this is a really important market to pay attention to. No matter where you are looking to enter, there are some things that you must reevaluate and which must change about your branding and about your business. The first is your messaging hierarchy. Although your key mission and your overall brand tone should probably be consistent across the board, some things may lead and some things may become supporting depending on the culture that you are engaging with. The next is your visuals. Symbolism is huge, and different colors, different iconography, even different fonts start to cue different things depending on where you're at. So it's really wise to be cognizant of what your imagery is and how it might differ when you change your audience. The next is your website structure, not just translation. Having a translate button and having a way for people to quickly switch to their native tongue is a great first step. However, especially as we get into languages who might have a different alphabet than what English and German and French use, it's really nice to be able to adjust your UX and your UI design to support that better. And you may want to change your hierarchy and your imagery and your proportions and everything to better support the new customers and clients that you are looking to serve. And lastly is your spatial design. So this is for any of my brands and businesses that have an in-person presence, whether that be a storefront or a restaurant or an office space. Your architecture and interiors absolutely should be adjusted to be context aware to whatever nation, or honestly even neighborhood you are showing up in. Which leads us nicely into who you should involve if you are looking to expand. It's impossible as one individual person to be absolutely fluent in every single culture that you might want to engage with. You might have a high level knowledge, but in the end, there's only so much that you can Google or learn from a quick trip to another country. Therefore, I would always recommend hiring strategists, hiring consultants, hiring designers who are on foot in the different countries that you want to expand into. In our studio, depending on where our clients are located and where the customers that they're looking to serve are located, we will call on different contractors and consultants that are in our network and staff them specifically onto projects that we think that they would be really good on. For example, I'm thinking about one of our clients who is a Nigerian jewelry brand, and they were actually looking to expand more into Canada and the US, which is where our team is primarily based. And so we were a really good fit for them. My nationality is Nigerian, so I understand a bit about the culture, but when it comes down to it, I am much more fluent in Canadian and American cultures than I am in Nigerian. And they did have some customers there. And so I have a Nigerian designer on my staff, and I made sure to pull him onto this project just so that we could have that extra edge and that extra level of cultural fluency. Now, we don't have somebody stationed in every single country in the world, but I would say for any project that you're trying to do, making sure that you have somebody who is very familiar and fluent in that language and that culture to be able to point out any blind spots and just make sure that things are aligned and they're reading the way that you want to. Of course, operationally, you want to make sure that you have legal professionals, tax professionals, just people who are going to make sure that everything is compliant in the countries that you are looking into. And with these two groups, in-house creatives that are going to flag any small misalignments and operational professionals that are going to make sure that you are compliant and that your business will run smoothly in another culture, you should be much better positioned to be able to have a global brand than if you were just to try to go it alone with whatever team you're working with on the regular. A globally resilient brand has a very consistent mission and worldview, but holds a lot of flexibility in the expression of it. They are intentional about the few markets that they choose to go into and dive into them with great positioning, and they are designed to endure shifts rather than chase cycles. You don't need to be everywhere, at least not right now. Let's save that for when you become a multi-million or billion-dollar brand. But you do need to be legible, respected, and desired in more than one place. My name is Tosin, and I'm the founding principal of Atelier Oluwatosin. We support brands often in premium and luxury spaces with excellent strategy that then leads to visual design in both digital and physical spaces. We're full service creative agency, and we support businesses through business consulting, website design, logo design, storefront design. Honestly, anything that falls into the umbrella of branding and marketing, we typically have the capability to support you in that. We would love to have a conversation with you about your specifics. Reach out to us. Let's have a conversation.